Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are really pleased to have on this morning the Superintendent at Quillayute Valley School District, Diana Reaume, and she is going to share with us some information about her school district. It's pretty unique. I don't think people are aware. I certainly wasn't until I had a lengthy conversation with Rod Fleck a couple years ago, and he was telling me a little bit about the unique school district that they have. So with that, just a few housekeeping items. If you make sure you keep yourself on mute so we don't inadvertently hear any background noises. And if you'd like to ask a question, we like this to be interactive. So please raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat if you'd prefer, and we will get to it. So with that, Diana, please take it away, and thank you again.
Yeah, I have a PowerPoint here just to keep me honest. So, and I haven't been on Zoom much lately. So if I mess up, I apologize. Let me go back here and get
slideshow.
Yeah,
up top. Yep.
There we go. Oh, wait. Okay, from the beginning. So welcome, and I thought I would just start out by introducing myself because I'm on the West End. You may not know me, but thank you, Colleen, for having me. And you did a great job of pronouncing my name. I let everyone know that it's Reaume, like a ray of sunshine, and ohm of electricity, although my husband says that's not really accurate. So, but Reaume, and I'm in my 38th year in education, and it feels like it's just sped by, but enjoying every minute of it. I'm in my 16th year as superintendent out here in Forks. We moved out here in 17 years ago. I still am very passionate about our students, their safety, their engagement in learning, and their successes. And I'm still very passionate about our profession. Like other professions throughout COVID, we're experiencing some shifts in our workers. We're having a more challenging time trying to attract and keep people in our profession. So that's one of my areas of expertise, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. My family is what brought me out here to the Olympic Peninsula. I have a 100% supportive husband, Justin. He's a semi-retired pilot. And then we have one son, but we have a very extended family out here. He's the second generation in his family. We now have great grand nephews and nieces in the system out here in Forks. So we moved out here. We bought his family property, which is located between Lake Crescent and Forks. So I actually don't even live in Forks. We have the best of both worlds. We're really close to PA and we're really close to Forks. So I was born and raised in Kansas. One of the things that got me loving to be in different places, I went to Europe when I was 19, lived there. I've taught high school English in Kansas, the Virgin Islands, and in Texas. I served as a principal in Galveston, Texas. We had more students in our building than we have in the city of Forks. I'm a traveler, traveled all over the world, really believe in alternative learning options. No child learns the same. I embrace the whole child development rather than focusing on one area. I love to read. I'm an avid reader, especially about the triumph of the human spirit. And again, we moved to Forks to be close to my family. One thing that's not on here, we run a small organic farm on our property. And so I also have a passion of making sure that our most needy, our elderly, homebound people, and are those who are in need of food, that we get fresh food into our food banks. I'm very fortunate to work with a passionate school board leaders of 5. We have Bill Rohde, who's been with our district now. I think he's in his 24th year he's our board chair. Ron Hearn is our vice chair. Shannon Dahlgren, legislative rep, Mike Reeves, WIAA rep, and then Kevin Hinchin, and they all are very student-centered and focused on making sure we have what we need here. So our school board goals are, of course, focusing on student growth and success. It's, as you probably heard from others, it's really challenging post-COVID, and engaging our students and keeping them socially and emotionally well. Our second goal is strengthening partnerships. So I guess part of me being here is getting out more into the Clallam County circuit. So I understand exactly what's going on in our county. And then our last goal, and I'll talk quite a bit about our facilities. We're in the process of updating a 20-year facility plan, but since I've been with Quillayute Valley School District, we've made a lot of improvements with our facilities. We have a simple plan on a page: academics, building a climate, and communication, so that when we're working with our staff, we have a very succinct, focused approach. And so you can just take a look at, we have our priorities and actions, and then our evidence of outcome. And really, it's a great tool for us when we're working with our staff, so they stay focused on the priorities of the district. And again, I really believe our primary role is to make sure that our students are safe, they have a safe learning environment, that they feel as though they belong and are accepted. We've been you probably heard a lot, or maybe not, about social emotional learning. And we have implemented what we call a tier 1 level social emotional learning platform called Character Strong. We started our journey long before COVID, but it's really played a part in us helping keep our kids focused and healthy during COVID. We also have a lot of education-based programs out here in Forks. And as you might expect and Colleen and I talked just a little bit before everybody got on, it's really challenging and hard with funding when you're losing students, but we've done a really good job of trying to keep educational-based programs because we know when our kids do more than just come to school, but they have a reason to come to school, they're more engaged and more successful. So I'm going to give a little bit of what I think are some of our strengths, not to mention that we don't have challenges. We're really seeing a lot of different challenges that we've ever experienced with coming out of COVID. But I believe that the most important factor in student learning is having a qualified teacher. And so I'm going to tell you about one of our successes. We have one of the strongest new teacher mentor programs in the state. We were one of the first school districts to get a grant back in, I think, 2014. And so we have wraparound service. We're growing our own teachers. So we find students who become paraeducators. And then rather than leave our area, we figure out how for them to get online learning to become a teacher. And then we have a really robust job embedded training part, kind of like an apprenticeship, really. And so we mentor other school districts in helping them figure out how to build a new teacher mentor program, but it's one of the things I'm very, very proud of. So our demographics, we have a really unique situation. I think this is what Colleen and I were talking about. So we have really two programs. So I'm going to talk first about our brick and mortar. We have Forks Elementary School, Forks Middle School, and Forks High School. So we have approximately 886 students that attend in our brick and mortar schools. And I will tell you, this is since kind of to give you when I started back in 17 years ago, I think we had 1,300 students. So we have continuously lost enrollment over the years. Prior to COVID, we had almost 1,000 students, and we predict that we're going to continue to lose our brick and mortar students. If you looked at our demographics, and this is or our enrollment, we are the size of right about Port Angeles, because we have an additional 2,500 students that don't step foot in Forks they're in our online program, an ALE program called Insight School of Washington. And we've have had that program now for 16 years. Hey, Colleen, if people have questions too, let me know, because I'm not very good at navigating.
Okay, I will. I had some questions. So ALE, what does that stand for?
That is it's called an alternative learning environment.
Okay.
And so they and in order to have a virtual school that has multi-choice, meaning we can get kids from all over the state. So those 2,500 students, they come from all over the state. We have a very, very sophisticated system. It's not like the online that popped up all over during COVID because of the requirement. So to give you an idea, out of the 2,500 students, 18% of them have special ed services. So we contract services for occupational therapy, physical therapy. We have 96 providers across the state where kids go to get their services. As you might know, our kids have to test for the state test. So another example of our online program, when state testing pops up, we have 50 sites where they go to do the testing. So it's really a sophisticated system. And again, we've run it now for 17 years, so we're really pretty good at that. Focusing back more on Forks, then we do have an early childhood program where we serve 54 students. We have a transitional kindergarten program now, which has become very popular, and we already know it's full for next year, and there's a waiting list. In our Forks area, we have about 35% Hispanic. And of the Hispanic, we have a growing population of Guatemalan speakers that are coming from Guatemala. We serve about—
Say that again. I'm sorry. How many from Guatemala?
Of the 35% Hispanic, we're seeing a growing amount of Guatemalan. And we believe that they come here as migrant workers for secondary forest products, picking salao, moss, planting trees.
And so, and their primary language, is it Nam?
And that's interesting. So there's 30 different dialects in the Guatemalan language. And of those 30, 15 don't have any written because they weren't allowed to have any writing I think it was when Spain overtook their area. And so it's a challenge. Some speak Spanish, and we have a lot of Spanish speaking employees, but some don't. So we do have a pretty robust English language learner. They call it multi-language learner now. And we do have a population of migrant families, migrant workers that we serve as well. We serve about 20% Native American, and the majority are Quillayute, Hoh River. We have, I think, 43 Hoh River students. We have some Makah, but we have tribal nations represented from all over as well. About 7.6% of our students are 2 or more races, and then about 36% white. So we're really very diverse.
Yeah.
And I've seen that those demographics change over the years as well.
So a question for you on that, if I may. On this slide brings up tons of questions for me. You mentioned that your enrollment is dropping for your brick and mortar. Where are those kids going? And is it younger students or is it older students that are just dropping out? Can you—
It's across the board.
that?
Yeah, we really tried to analyze it like all the superintendents, and we figure we're losing about 5% each year. And what I see in Forks is we have a ton of Airbnbs, and there is not affordable housing for families.
So are they moving away?
Yeah, if we looked at our roster out of state, we get a lot of kids coming and going here on the peninsula between Crescent, sometimes PA, Squim, but for the most part, and I could really dive into our data and get you hard fact numbers, but a lot of them are leaving the state
Yeah.
from what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
then
then-
the
Oh, go
other,
ahead.
the other change that we're really seeing is that 80% of our students now qualify for free or reduced lunch. And so the demographics, we're getting kids, what I call, that come from families that maybe aren't school ready. They don't have the resources. And so that's a change. We are now what is called a community eligibility program, where all of our students eat free lunches, free breakfasts and free lunch, regardless of what their economic background is.
Okay.
Our average size of a graduation class is 60. It used to be around 80. So that has shrunk as well. Our kindergarten classes used to be around 80. Now they're around 60 students, to give you an idea. We have been able to maintain our certificated staff level at about 88 full-time equivalent. That's not including, I'll talk about our online program. And then our classified, we have just about as many. That's our bus drivers, our kitchen staff, our paraeducators. But overall, when you look at our total employment, including our coaches and our substitutes, which we really can't find substitutes anymore. We employ about 200 staff members. We have additional about 180 in our online program, but we don't actually employ them. Our contracted services with our provider does the employment for those. So those aren't employed by QESD.
And can you tell us a little bit more about because we've done a lot of work in childcare, and we're at the EDC helping start up a childcare center in Clallam Bay. What ages do you, in your early childhood program and transitional kindergarten, what ages do you support in those programs?
In the early childhood program, we have 3 and 4-year-olds. But they have to qualify either through economic qualification or developmental delayed. So it is limited. Our transitional kindergarten has opened up more slots. So let's say a student turns 5 after the September 1. We have a lot of students that then they don't qualify for any preschool anywhere because they're 5, but their birth date is after September 1. And so this helps fill that gap. But they also may not qualify for the early childhood program. They could be 4. We just can't compete with the early childhood program. And the state is kind of in the process of changing that transitional kindergarten. This is the first year we've had it, though, and it has been extremely successful. And then
I'm quite sure your free and reduced lunches percentage at 80%. I think that's probably the highest of the 5 school districts in the county. I know when I've looked at the demographics by census tract, Forks City proper has the highest poverty rate, higher than any of the tribes or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why when we did our boost grant and looked for underserved businesses, we tried to target Forks and tried to target people that were Hispanic or non-speaking business owners.
Yeah. Well, and if you looked at our overall data through OSPI, it's going to look different just because we don't feed our online program kids. There's no way we could ever do that. And so that drops that number a little bit. I think we're at 68%, but if we pull our kids out and look at our kids that we serve, we're really right at 80%. So that
wow.
Yeah. And that demographic has changed too. Again, we've got an outstanding early childhood program that serves our most needy students. In order to operate this, we get an evaluation by DCYF, and we achieved a level 4. We were within 2 points of achieving the highest score. So I'm really proud of the work that our staff does. And it is a multilingual program, so we serve a lot of Spanish speaking students as well. So they're learning English and Spanish at the same time. And then again, we have one of the largest successful online schools. It's called Insight School of Washington. It used to just be a high school that served mostly, we were what I would call, we would get fourth and fifth and sixth year seniors who had dropped out somewhere and they were re-engaging. And so when you look at our data, it looks like our on-time graduation rate is not that great, but in actuality, we graduate about 600 seniors a year. And of those 600 seniors in our program, we believe that 2/3 of them would not have gotten a diploma if they had not re-engaged. We have a lot of students who have to work to support their families and they can't go to school during the day. And so we have part synchronous and asynchronous, which means that sometimes you have to be present online and with a teacher face-to-face. That's synchronous, and asynchronous is when you can access the learning at different times throughout the day. And we have, like I said, a pretty sophisticated program. It really is about ed tech and giving options for families who may be remotely working somewhere else and can't be in their school. But I'm really proud of our program. We partner with, it used to be K-12, it's now called Stride. And we're doing some really innovative work with career technology. We're working to work with the Kaiser Foundation to figure out how we can get more of our students in healthcare. Our online kids, they have an option to learn more technical components of the healthcare system and then get them into some kind of a technical program while they're still in high school. So they come out with certificates and can go right into the healthcare profession, because we know that that's one of the areas that we're seeing such a shortage of workers. But during COVID, we expanded our program for K-8 and it continues to grow each year. We're predicting that we'll have 3,000 students next year that we'll be budgeting for. So when we're looking at Port Angeles, Sequim, Crescent, and we are losing our brick and mortar students, like I said, probably about 5% each year. We're predicting we'll have 800 students next year, but our online program is growing. So it really does different things to our local budget here.
Mm-hmm. How do people find these students that are from other areas? And it's just in the state, right? It's not from out of state.
No, we cannot serve out of state.
Okay.
We're an accredited program, which means we have to have all certified teachers. OSPI reviews our curriculum. Our curriculum has to match the standards. The kids have to do all the same things to graduate that they do in a brick and mortar school. So it's just really like running a school without the building.
Gotcha. Yeah. So how do kids or families across the state find out about the Insight School of Washington?
We do have a marketing program, and you might see some ads on TV or on social media, but for the most part, it's through word of mouth. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of families when I meet kids, and we do some face-to-face events with the students. We have a prom. We do graduation face-to-face, but when I meet families, for whatever reason, we get a lot of students who are bullied. They don't want to go to their brick and mortar school because they don't feel welcome. They don't feel like they belong. We get a lot of students who have health problems, social anxiety. We get students who, for whatever reason, we have some that are like, we have a professional singer who travels all over the nation, but wants to still complete her degree in Washington State. We had a ping pong player, an international ping pong player, a rodeo. So we've got it all. And the best part about having this program is really when we do our graduation in person and you get to hear the personal stories of why the kids have chosen our program. But that's probably one of the things that a lot of our local people don't know about QVSD. And I see our public schools changing a lot because of COVID and the ed tech that we had to figure out how to, but I will tell you, this program is not for everyone. Like my own son would never have thrived in this. He doesn't do well learning on computers. So it does take a niche, for sure. So then I think I'll transition then. One of the things that I know, I'm very fortunate with our school board. They developed a very succinct 20-year facility plan probably about 12 years ago. And so now we're getting ready to transition because we've really done a lot of check off the box. And so one of our latest projects was to replace Spartan Stadium. And again, with being in a small rural area, sports are very important and community activity to our families. And so I just want to share where we are with our project and then how we believe that it will help enhance our community and attract more people here for events. But in 2016, we put in field turf. It has the quality of the Seahawks field turf. And so it's just really a professional field. And backing up, we tried to pass as part of our bond that we passed in 2008 when we built our high school. We had a two-prong component, and the stadium failed. Of course, the high school passed. And so the stadium's been on the facility plan, trying to figure out how to do that. And the board really just kept pestering me to figure out how to make it work, even though we didn't have the funding for it. And so we did have enough in our undesignated, unreserved funds back in 2016 to do the field turf. And we were really trying to figure out where we're going to do the field turf or the stadium, because the stadium really wasn't safe for our aging community. We didn't have proper ADA, handrails. It was really just about to fall down. So long story short, we put a committee of citizens together in 2019, and they worked all year to envision what the stadium would look like. And we literally had our last meeting that we figured out how we were going to do our phase 1 and phase 2, meaning the stadium and then the bathrooms. And we had our last meeting on March 12th, 2020, and then COVID hit and we shut down.
Hey, I have a question for you, Diana. So you guys in the Forks area have the highest poverty rate, yet you are able to pass school bonds regularly. And in contrast, Sequim and Port Angeles have higher incomes, lower poverty, and they cannot pass school bonds. Why do you suppose that is? What is the secret sauce of Quillayute Valley School District in Forks?
Well, it's interesting. When I took over the superintendent's position, the first board meeting I sat in, the board said, we want you to go out for a bond. And I knew nothing about going out for a bond at that time. I was pretty young and naive. But one of the things that we did is we just harnessed our community members, found probably 2 people who really, it was word of mouth. We did old fashioned. I think we met with over 40 different events where we just said, here's what we need, here's why we need it. But we were also at that time, we've kept our M&O or our EP&O levy at minimum. We don't, and I guess I'm really not sure, Colleen. We just did it with a lot of help, and of course our high school at the time was in shambles. It was just our heating system. I remember going into classes and kids were wrapped in blankets. It was so bad because we couldn't keep our heat going. But anyway, that's a good question. I give it up to the board, and then again the incredible community of Forks and the people that really support our students. Anyway, so we put this citizen committee together. We got our vision for the we were thinking about trying to pass a capital levy to pay for the stadium. And then of course COVID hit. But what was interesting during COVID, and so maybe some of you know this, but if you pass a bond, then you have access to your junior taxing district dollars that are in those areas. But if you don't have a bond, you don't get to collect those junior taxing district dollars. And what happened during COVID and has been happening a little bit prior is we were getting, so I'll give you a good example. Our debt service is about a million a year. So we have to collect our tax dollars for the bond, and then the junior taxing, any of the timber dollars in those areas offset that. So if we have more timber dollars, it should, in theory, it lowers the tax rate for the bond. But during COVID, especially for the last 5 years, DNR has done a much better job of getting sales out and getting more logging done in the junior taxing districts. And so our funds built in our debt service fund well above what we needed to pay off our long-term debt. And so what you can do with that, those dollars, there's two things. You can either pay down your debt service faster, or you can take those dollars and move them to your capital projects fund for another project. And so we had a public hearing, and the board basically had the opportunity to move in excess like 2.2 million over into capital projects funds to pay for our stadium. And so we were very fortunate. We didn't see that coming. And so that's one of the things that this was our old stadium. You can see it was built in 1964. The Lions Club put it together back in 1964. So here's our field turf being, you can see in the background, you can see the old stadium there. And now there's our new stadium. And so it actually seats 1,136 observers. We have a real professional press box with technology, a great sound system. One of the parts that we're trying to figure out yet is we've already got the LED lights engineered where they will retrofit, so we could in theory have a concert with different flashing lights, all kinds of things. So we're working on the lighting part yet. That's the only other part. It's now ADA compliant in the front row. If you looked right in here, this is all seated where you could have wheelchairs with a companion seats. We did a lot of work, intentional work with the school pride with colors and signage, and I'll show you that here. And so this is the Spartan Stadium sign. We have a ticket booth. We've replaced part of the fencing, and we'll finish replacing the rest of the fencing in phase 2. But our signature is on the back of the stadium where it says Spartan Stadium. Those are LED. They'll be lit up at night. There's 6 feet lettering. We're the first K-12 stadium to have that feature. And so this will be advertised nationwide, and probably will be a trend that you'll start seeing in K-12 stadiums. But we were really fortunate to get that, and we feel like that's a great feature. So in phase 2, we'll complete our bathroom facilities. When we were looking at the stadium, we did not put concession stands or anything underneath. When you add those underneath the stadium, it increases the cost, because then you have to have all of the fire safety and everything. So we've got separate, our concession stand is really at the back part of our high school. It's just a walk over. The bathroom facilities will be separate a little further down. Our next big project, our bond will expire, or we'll finish paying off our bond in 2027, which sounds like a long ways away, but we're only 4 years out. So we're starting to plan our new bond, where we're going to replace Forks Middle School. That will be our next big project.
You know, I was just thinking about my question before. about why is it that Port Angeles and Sequim in particular can't pass bonds, but Forks is able to. Do you think it could partially be that, well, number one, you have a much younger population in Forks, and therefore compared to especially Sequim, I think it's like 20 years younger is the median age. And could it, so maybe that has something to do with it, but also a lot of your population are renters. And so renters get to vote, but it would be a pass-through expense for the property owner. And there's a lot of property owners that don't live in the community, or if they own, 5 homes or something, they only get to vote once for the 5 properties that they own.
Well, I will tell you this, when we passed the original bond, it was 2008. So our demographics, our Airbnbs, I think we have 100, I'd have to ask Rod again. I think we have 160 Airbnbs. Yeah. Our footprint for voting is going to look very different. And we already know when we did our EP&O levy, usually we passed our EP&O levies at like 69%. We passed it this last time at 59%. So we know when we go back out for a bond, we're going to have to use different strategies and really study our voting footprint, and probably have to do it very differently and strategically. But we will include a lot of our, what I would call our generational Forks who plan on staying here forever and keeping their kids in our school. We'll have to use some other strategies, but we'll be starting to work on that next year, as that'll be a big focus of mine.
Gotcha. So I know working with Pam Rushton, our tax assessor, she provided me with a data dump of all properties within the county, and I segregated it by Forks, and I think I called it West End, but also had Forks City, and then Port Angeles and Sequim. And then I also looked at sales that occurred. And so I did this last year in 2022, but went back 5 years looking at the number of sales and evaluated how many sales in the county were purchased by the new owners, being folks that either owned multiple properties or or their taxing address was outside of the county or outside of, the Forks, for example. And it went from about 7% per year. And then after COVID hit, it went up to 42%. Oh, wow. So that just shows that the more of the sales, which of course doesn't represent every single, property didn't sell within a year. So it's a small subset of it, but definitely it's showing a trend that more and more property owners are investors versus residents. Yeah. And I segregated out like multifamily and, so single family properties and who own those. Yeah. So that is just a factoid that you might share when you're talking about your bonds, that you've got a lot more investors. But the good thing is, if they don't live here, they don't get a vote on a school bond, but you can still, cause them to have to pay it. Yeah. But then of course they'll pass on that additional expense to their renters. Yeah.
Well, one of our concerns too is what we got for our high school, and then we had a new part of the high school, so we really only built half of the high school to marry the old part that we had built in 2002, and it cost 19 million. But when we're looking at pricing for a middle school to house 300 students, we're probably looking at 60 million. And so our goal was to replace the old bond with the new bond, but my thinking is to get 60 million, it's going to be much more of a challenge. It's just It is, and the average person doesn't understand that. Why would a building that houses 300 kids cost 60 million? I have a friend, one of my superintendent friends in Stillicum, they're having a really hard time passing their bond for their middle school. And she said, you're going to be shocked. And she said, and now each year you delay, they are predicting 8 to 10% more of what it'll cost. And that's why we did the stadium and pushed to get it done as soon as we could. We got our structure from a state entity, KCDA, and they locked in the price for us when COVID hit. And so we couldn't delay it. We were desperate to figure out how to get the money. We were just really, I guess, I got the lucky jackpot with our timber industry is what I tell people when they ask how were we able to do it. And then we locked in that price for the structure. But now I think we paid $1.3 million for the steel structure. And I think if we had waited after COVID, we would almost pay $3 million. It's like doubled. It's insane. And so
Yep.
I see Marty Brewer on here, but we're in a crisis with our buildings. I mean, I'm very fortunate in Forks, but all of our schools where we can't raise the money, they've got to change the system, because at some point there's nothing you can do anymore, and you can't get, we're going to have a hard time passing bonds. So it just doesn't, I feel like that the average person doesn't really understand all of that.
Yeah. Diana, I'm a broken record on this issue, but the state policy is that prevailing wages our prevailing wages in our county are the same as Seattle's. So yet our household income is half. And in Forks, it's probably more like a third.
Right.
So that is a huge driver. When the port does work, for an example, we had an entity that wanted to build a hangar, and we looked at building it ourselves, and it was $3.2 million. When the private entity, and they said, no way, we can never get a return on investment at that price. They ended up doing it for less than 1.5 million. So, and the materials were the same, but just the whole process and the prevailing wages make it, twice the amount, at least, sometimes 2.5 and 3 times the amount.
Oh yeah, and then the soft costs, and then the prevailing wage, it's just unreal. And then just all of the safety features that we have to have for a public building. The average person doesn't understand all of that. But anyway, other questions? I mean, I feel like I covered a ton.
It looks like Jim has a question, or no, just thumb up. Does anybody have any questions for Diana? I find I always think about that we export our kids, and we export everything, and we just don't have very much where we're importing dollars to our community. And yet your school district, that program where we are in charge here and training kids outside of the state, that's an outlier. And so congratulations for that. That's awesome.
We're really working hard. So our parent company, Stride, I'll give you an example. And I don't know where you see public schools and ed tech come together, but like in Chicago, one of our schools with one of our Stride schools, and they're of course in a huge city, but they have kids that actually are on the job training as commercial electricians in the morning, and they get paid to do that as a junior and a senior. But they have to then, on the job site, they have a trailer where they go in and they complete their degree online, their high school degree online. If they don't make progress in their degree online, they don't get paid for their apprenticeship in the mornings. But when they graduate from high school, they will have a commercial electrician's certificate. And that's really where I see the marry of ed tech and our public school system, and figuring out how to do that with healthcare, figuring out how to do that with teaching, so that our kids aren't wasting time. They're not spending money and failing at college level of programs that they get a psychology degree and then they don't have a skill. I mean, we really want to harness and figure out what that looks like. I think we're in a critical place as public educators when we're looking at the shortage of pilots, of healthcare workers, of, you know, all the different areas. And we've got to really harness and figure out how truck drivers, we've got to figure out how to make that better.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to see it in a pre-apprenticeship electrician program like that in our state, but what the unions got something passed that you have to go to a formal apprenticeship program, a registered apprenticeship program, to become a commercial electrician in our state now. And the closest one for us is in Puyallup, which is the non-union, or right next to SeaTac is the union program. So the electrician program, I don't think can happen, but I know that healthcare definitely, there's opportunity there, and we have to pursue those kind of things.
Yeah.
Pat McCauley had a question. Pat, do you want to ask it?
Pat, I think I saw that you asked how many McKinney-Vento kids we had. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we are in the process of revamping how we identify those kids. We had change in personnel. So you guys all know, we have a real struggle of getting workers, especially paraeducators now. We have a shortage of that. And it's a real challenge, but we had a change in personnel who usually make sure that we have all the paperwork. But I think right now we have about 30 identified McKinney-Vento students. But another indication that we know that we've not fully gotten all of our count this year is that we are now serving 40 families with weekend backpacks of food. So we have a weekend food program where we send food home with kids. We have to be really careful and meet the guidelines of our nutrition program, but just that in itself, with handing out 40 backpacks, we probably have more that are unidentified.
Can I ask you a second question on that?
Sure.
What kind of FTE position do you make that?
We have a full-time equivalent. She does other things as well. You know, it works with our Readiness to Learn program, which is really making sure that families who don't have blankets or shoes or need health care, she does other things as well, but one full-time equivalent.
Thank you.
Rebecca has her hand up.
Good morning, Diana.
Hi, Rebecca.
It's just so interesting, you know, whenever you dig down into these and understand the different complexities that each of us has. But one time you were telling us about when you're educating the migrant population, kind of how complicated that is as they come and go and enter. And I thought that might be of interest to the group.
Yeah, so we're seeing more, I would say, high school age students who have been detained at one of our borders, south somewhere. And we are an attraction because of our secondary forest product picking for families. We sent one of our English language learner teachers to Guatemala this past summer, and she visited the community where a lot of our families are coming from so we could better understand what their needs are. But some of our kids are literally detained on the border, and then they get on a bus when they're let out, and they know to come to Forks. They know no English. They don't even know if their family's here. And so we're also starting to see where some of our kids are being exploited for human trafficking. And so again, there are all these problems that you see in the news. They're really happening even in our own communities. And I don't think when we look at changing demographics, we're seeing it firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, all right.
All right, Diana, I have a quick question. This is Matt from Square.
Matt.
So I bought some, they had a great bake sale going on in your grocery store. A bunch of sixth graders were there and I had to buy some cookies and cinnamon rolls or whatever, just, and my wife was throwing dollar bills at them. I said, so what am I donating this for? And they said, for our road trip or our field trip. And I said, oh, where are you going? And they said, well, this is when we graduate. And I said, from sixth grade? And they said, no, from high school. And I said, what? You're in sixth grade, right? And they said, yeah, but we're saving for our high school graduation trip. And I thought, holy smokes, now that's planning. So do you have a tradition of do the senior class go to Hawaii or something, or what's?
No, oh, they would love to. No, but they usually do a trip to Seattle or somewhere in an all day. We haven't done the overnighters because of COVID and everything, but they're planners. And so it was interesting during COVID, our class of 2021 didn't get to go on their trips, so they donated their money to the stadium, and we had over $11,000.
Wow.
That they had left over. They get gifts, and everything, but yeah, they're planners. It's a tradition.
That was so impressive. I mean, they had a parent or a teacher there that was kind of shepherding these 5 or 6 kids. It was cute. But
thank you for supporting them. I guess I'd just like to close too. We just have an amazing community. We do we have a scholarship auction. Our kids who graduate locally here in Forks can tap into this funding for 2 years, 2 times after they get out of high school. So even if they went to lineman's school or they can buy things for their career or whatever, but our kids raised $168,000 in 48 hours. So that kind of tells you the support that our community has for our kids. It's just really, I guess that's what's kept me here so long, my family. And then I'm one of the longest sitting superintendents in one chair, I think, for 16 years, but I'm very fortunate to be here. And then I just want to tell you, I just love the superintendents that we have in our county. Marty Brewer's awesome. Squim, wow, what a great superintendent they've got now too as well. And then of course Dave Bingham, and we just have really caring individuals that really care about our community and our kids. So I'm very blessed to work with Marty, Reagan, and Dave.
Well, really good to hear. I think if we don't have any more questions, I think we will call it a morning and we'll end it here at 8:55 and you guys can get your mornings going. So thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate all your time, Diana, and the amazing work you do for the community out in Forks. We're really blessed to have you as part of the larger community of Clallam County. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.